Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast.
Akie, hello, my friend.
Oh, Steph, hello, my friend.
Oh, hello.
Oh, hello to you. Happy season 3 day to you.
Happy new season to you too. Isn't this
Yes.
exciting? This is the first time we're recapping almost live.
Yes, a show that we've only seen less than 24 hours ago for me.
That's true. Same.
Yeah.
I also saw it
Well,
very recently as well. Twice.
did you watch? Oh, yes, indeed. Oh, yes, you watched it twice.
Watched it twice because we're nerds.
Well, we
wanted to get all of the good stuff. Make sure that we'd seen it properly.
That's right. It had to be seen properly. Okay, so welcome you folks out there and anyone listening hereafter to Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about Star Trek Discovery, and heretofore we've only discussed past episodes, but now we are current. We are part of what is happening now.
Isn't it exciting?
It's very exciting. It's very exciting. But we're going to control ourselves. First and foremost, Steph.
Yes.
How did you feel about the episode?
I loved it. It felt really fresh and really new.
Yeah.
Like you had this, and plus obviously there was a conscious effort that you're 930 years into the future, and then there was just all of these new things.
Yes.
To look at.
I thought they did that super well. Like we think of Star Trek as super futuristic, and then they made what we think of as futuristic seem old.
Yeah.
In a cool way.
Well, because, it was that literal thing of here's an antique, here's a tricorder antique.
Right.
So all of the things that we know of are all old.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of lines where where Book calls her like a rocket girl and so on and so forth, like just referencing her like an antiquity to her, including, as we will get to, the Federation itself.
Indeed.
Is antiquated and rare. I too loved it. I thought it was fantastic, and it was also very classic Trek. I feel like they didn't, even though it's cereal and my face is on your cup.
Yes, it is. Isn't this? It's on. My face is also on my cup too.
Yes, your face is turned inward, and my face is turned out. I thought it was great, and it had a lot of adventure and hijinks for a first episode. Did it not?
It did. There was a part of me that felt like there was a lot of Star Wars to it.
Oh, a ton. I actually wrote a bunch about this.
Okay. And I feel bad saying that, but
no, I thought they used the right parts of Star Wars. I don't think it was I don't think they tried to be like, here's a magical force that moves through nature and stuff, but in terms of having a rogue and going to the marketplace and dealing with baddies and a fight on the run and other things I noticed. I thought they used that well, and it started the season with a tone of excitement, and there's weight to it as well, but also a lot of humor.
Yes, there was. Yeah, there was. Cool. So, Akie, what should we do? Should we run it down a little bit?
It's time to run it down.
It's time to run it down.
Can you run it down for me? What just happened? Can you run it down for me?
Yeah, we'll tell you what just happened. Season 3 just happened. All over. I guess we're going to take this in chunks. That's my idea. I don't know if this will work. And if we decide to go off the rails, Steph, we go off the rails. That's what happens, that hope is you. I loved the opening sequence. Before we even get to
yes.
what we thought was the opening sequence, we get this extra opening sequence because they had teased the part
Yep.
with Michael crashing into Book's ship, but we didn't. This whole thing with the dude Aditya, where it's just him waking up every day at 8 o'clock, and he's got that sweet bird alarm clock, which I immediately was like, I want that.
And it was different colors every day. Just cool.
Yeah, it was a different color every day, and you know, you just kind of like wave your hand, but it wakes you up with a bird's song, and then his like he gets up and his bed disintegrates into the floor, and then the mirror comes out, and he laser brushes his teeth maybe or something, and then the desk comes up out of the thing, and then he just sits there, or he gets like fully dressed, and he puts like a little Starfleet briefcase on the desk. And he sits there and he opens up the thing and it says searching for signals, and there are no signals. And he's just sitting there. And I thought it was really cool because it gives you like, whoa, the technology is hip. You know, this is way cooler than phasers. It also gives you a sense of like solitude
and devotion. Duty.
It's got both. It's like both hopeful and dutiful, but also like every day for this guy is the same. Because they kept showing the bird different and waking up different, brushing his teeth different, but every day he sits down at that desk and searches for signals. Yeah. So I thought that was cool. And that was like a little, we sort of knew it had to be the future at that point. And then we get into the action. And so we meet Book or Booker, Cleveland Booker. It's in media res. We meet them in the middle of the action. He's being chased by some guy named Cosmo, and they're flying, and Cosmo's like doing, and this was another like very Star Warsy moment.
It was like a Han Solo moment, and he's like stolen cargo.
It's a very Han Solo thing, and he's like, dude, and he's like smart talking the guy that's chasing him, but he's also like, it seems like he's a bad guy, but for some reason he also seems kind of like a good guy. He does at one point say like, it doesn't belong to you, it belongs to itself. Yes. You know, making you aware that maybe what they're fighting over might be like a living thing. And what I noticed specifically about the visuality in terms of Star Wars is that Book's ship is super asymmetrical, very Millennium Falcon style. Like either it's all on one side, and then it's like weirdly sleek on the other side. And he's like flying it himself. And anyway, he comes up to a space-time anomaly that is Michael coming through. And they crash into each other, and they cause each other both to plummet onto the planet Heme. And that's another beautiful shot that I wrote down. I loved it when they were both like the spiraling clouds down into the thing.
How could Michael, who, you know, in comparison to that ship is a tiny little blip, bring down that ship? I thought that was a little bit somewhat far-fetched.
It was a bit. I having watched it the second time, I was like, oh, she's moving at
maybe
interdimensional speeds, or something, or maybe there's like isn't there some sort of weird field around her, because that's the only way a human can withstand the time jump that her mother mentioned. Anyway, I came up with a billion excuses.
Okay, but here's
the point is, it's not realistic.
So when she was crashing, you saw her kind of go through the debris of a ship, which looked very sort of circular and somewhat Discovery-like. So I felt like as that was happening, you were like, oh no, did Discovery get here first? Or
I think that was part, and I should have watched again and looked to see if you could see the call sign on it.
I looked, you can't.
Okay. Well, we know in this season of Discovery that Discovery is around, but it was definitely debris of seemingly a Starfleet ship. And definitely a saucer section. But I'm guessing that if she was truly traveling at speed, she was moving through the space-time continuum. We don't know if she had actual velocity, but we're assuming that she did. And also, it's fine, even if they weren't at ballistic speeds. So I think that maybe after the quote burn, when all the dilithium exploded in the warp reactors. Spoiler alert! If you haven't seen episode 1 of season 3,
we should make that disclaimer. You must watch Star Trek Discovery before you listen to this show.
You should watch every of the last 2 seasons of Star Trek Discovery, and hey, listen to this podcast if you want to know what's up, because otherwise you're going to be confused because it truly everything begins in the middle of things here in season 3.
Catch up.
Well, okay, so when they crash, we get like Michael I really loved yet another scene where Michael's in a suit flying through space out of control and things are scary. She has to do a hard reboot of the suit while plummeting through the atmosphere. It was terrifying.
Yes.
If I hadn't,
like
I mean, it was
crashing
just a
down.
scary moment, but I was so tense that I was thinking to myself, I know they have to do more episodes, so Michael's not going to die right now. But I was like, this is crazy. When she does get up, I thought that was cool. That like first thing she does is to check if there's life. So she's checking to see if the mission worked.
Oh, I thought the first thing she did was puke.
Well, that's not
But
that was
yes, you're right.
involuntary. First thing she does is puke clear liquid. And then when she stood up, she checks to see if there's life in the galaxy, and there is, and she has a huge celebration over that. And I thought that was nice. It was that was what the last 2 hours of season 2 were all about, was this struggle to have life remain. And while we know that it went on because of the epilogue to the final episode, taking it from Michael's perspective, she just goes into the wormhole and is hoping that it works out. So I get it. Then she tries to contact Discovery, and surprise, surprise, no dice. But she does figure out it's the year 3188. So it's the late 80s.
I did love how they gave the actual year versus a star date, because that was obviously for us.
That was so we know she went 930 years in the future. We can figure it out. We kind of have a sense of how long it's been, because then they start throwing other numbers at us and things like that. Anyway, she, just before the wormhole closes, she's able to send the suit back so that Spock gets the signal and then self-destructs it. It's set it to self-destruct once it goes back. And so it worked. She's trying to pull herself together because she has like a little sort of a breakdown, but she's like repeating her rank and name and the call sign and the serial number of Discovery so that she can get her stuff together. And then she sees the other wreck and she walks towards it. And that's when we get the new credits. Yes. Because I'm a nerd, I wrote down all the things that are new in the credits.
I did too. I figure you wouldn't miss anything, but I wrote down what I thought was cool.
I may have done, but I just wanted to make sure I had everything. Well, let's see. The first new thing is the drones robots, which did not show up in this episode, so I'm curious where they show up. There's a new phaser. They show you like the old phaser, and then it comes apart and becomes a new shaped phaser. There is the ship that turns into Book's ship. Right? That was cool. I don't know if this was new because I was too lazy to go back and check, but the live long and prosper sign, is there always a weird tattoo in the palm?
Didn't see the tattoo before, but I'm sure I saw that before.
That was always there, but this time there was like a little silhouetted tattoo in the palm.
I must have missed that.
And so I feel like that's like an Easter egg of some sort, because it's very hard to figure out. And then there's the new badges.
Yes, the new Starfleet insignia.
The new ovular. Now we got to get new badges.
Yeah, I know.
Assuming those are badges,
Swap
but
this out.
Those are all the new things I saw in the credits, and I was delighted.
Yes.
Michael comes upon Book's ship, and first contact is violent.
Yes.
Because I think Book thinks he's trying to steal his ship or whatever. Because we later find out about this whole courier system, which I describe as the Craigslist / Amazon of the future. And so there's a big fight. It's sort of a misunderstanding. Book thinks he's out to get him, and she's just trying to get help. And he really doesn't want to know her name, which is also very interesting. He's like, just don't even tell me. It's a lot of stuff where he's like, don't tell me. I don't want to know. Like he's, wash himself of like responsibility or age. He said, I do not want to make your acquaintance.
Yes. It's very old fashioned, I thought.
Yes.
Cute.
And a little British. Was he not?
British, yes. It's funny because I've seen him act in, I'm sure it was like a CW thing. And he had this awful Cockney accent. And it was so bad, I thought it was an American doing it. And it turns out he's just really, really British.
Well, that tickled me.
Well, I mean, if you and
Yeah.
I, like, even if I tried to do a Cockney accent, I don't think it would go well.
Yeah, like I can't do a you know,
You could do
good-
Jack Sparrow very well, but I'm not sure about anything else.
yeah. Well, I'm let alone UK. I'm saying, regionally here in America, there are things
True.
there are accents I shouldn't try that
Mm.
would come off really terrible. I can think of a few, but we needn't go down that road. Okay, so he calls her phaser an antique. And then he mentions there's a lot of stuff that he drops that I guess the idea is that we feel like this is the future. A lot of stuff has happened. You need to catch up because I do feel a little bit lost
Yeah.
in some of these things. But I didn't want to Google and like spoil. I don't want to spoil the surprise for myself. But like when he says like that her tritanium alloy suit is weird. Apparently that's a new thing. Calling the phaser an antique. Later on the ship, he's mentioning all the ways that he basically can't make his rendezvous. And I wrote those down. Let's see. He can't fly the quantum slipstream. I'm not sure if that was like futuristic phraseology for warp. Warp was always, I thought, was always considered like a warp bubble.
Yeah.
That then allows you to travel faster than the speed of light. Like it's kind of like a micro wormhole of some sort. But the quantum slipstream, and they also showed warp very different, or whatever he's flying once he gets dilithium, very different than when like Discovery is doing it, or other ships in the past. But he says tachyon solar cells. He says those are too slow. And he says, don't even get me started about trilithium.
So we had dilithium and trilithium.
Dilithium, trilithium, quantum slipstreams, and obviously the tachyon solar cells are not going to work at all. So he needs his whole crux is he's here running into Michael, caused the ship to break. He needs to make his rendezvous because he's got sensitive cargo that we know is stolen. And in order to make his rendezvous, he'll need to obtain some dilithium. And so he says the only way he can get dilithium is to trade it at the mercantile. Thus begins an adventure to the mercantile. But I do not want to skip over the introduction of quite possibly the most important new character in the series, Grudge the cat.
Grudge the cat. I love that. I love that little introduction.
I actually, surprise, surprise, wrote it down.
I did too. That was my favorite.
It's so great. Yes. Michael says, you have a very large cat.
It was the delivery of it.
It was the delivery of it. Because, he's like yelling at her. He's been very combative up to this point. And then suddenly he's like nestling with his cat. He's like nose to nose with his rightfully very large cat. And she says, you have a very large cat. And he says, yes, she has a thyroid condition, which is ridiculous because it's the year 3188, remember? And Michael says, does she have a name? And he says, Grudge. And she says, because. And he says, one of my favorite lines of the episode, she's heavy and all mine. Okay. I also had another weird theory about this episode, but I'll talk about it later.
All right.
I don't know if it was like a little thing. So anyway, their plan is to go to the mercantile and trade one of Michael's antiques to obtain some dilithium. Or at least that's what Book tells Michael he plans to do. And so they're going to use her tricorder to get some dilithium. They leave the ship. He like has this, I really loved Book's like little thing. It's like a gold compass that appears in the air, like a circular keypad. And he like does things on it.
Numbers in it or something.
Whatever. I'm into it. And somehow Michael is able to understand how this works too. She's like, oh, your cargo is heat sensitive? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, you don't want anyone to know where it is, because then he cloaks his whole ship, which is also, we should talk about that. He has a well, it's another theory. I don't know how many theories I want to give away right now. We should have probably like a
theory corner.
should have a tinfoil corner, especially for me because I'm spinning all my wheels. He cloaks his whole ship so they can go, and he doesn't have to worry about someone finding it. And they walk overland, and that's where we learn that Book's job is a courier, and what couriers do is carry things from the mercantile to the buyers, but they're only given enough dilithium to make the run to the buyer and back. And then so their existence is dependent upon the mercantile. It is if I was thinking of a good way to show an exploitative consumerist system, capitalist system, I could not think of a better illustration of it. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Is that he's like an Uber driver in space, not given, like barely given enough money. If he owns the ship, they give him barely enough gas to run it, to do the errands, to barely make a living.
Right.
So we've gone from the Federation. This is also where we find out that the Federation has collapsed. We've gone from the Federation, which is like, it's all about bettering yourself.
And money doesn't exist. There's no
money doesn't exist. Yeah. To now what it seems like a planets spanning quasi stock market, antiques, buy and sell, I don't know how to describe it. It seems like very, well, mercantilist, for lack of a better word. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I thought that was interesting that's the dystopian future. They didn't go for like, he kills people and wears their flesh as a cape, like that wasn't the dystopian future. For the Federation, a dystopian future is, people working for paychecks. Okay, where was I? I almost kapla cornered just then. All right, so this is where Book tells Michael that the Federation is gone and explains what the burn is.
Yes.
So we get some clues as to what the burn is.
We do.
It's the burn, based on what Book tells us, happened 100 to 120 years previous.
Mm-hmm. So
sometime before. Yes.
So that was 710 years after Michael left.
Yes. And we get some other information. That's later, other information. So yeah, about 700 years, give or take, after Michael left. And the Federation collapsed a little bit after that.
Yes. And
basically the burn was that someday, for some inexplicable reason, most of the dilithium in the galaxy went, quote, boom, which I think means exploded, meaning that the warp cores of every warp-capable ship in the galaxy exploded, killing uncountable number. I can't even think of how many people that would be. Countless. Yes, that's the number. Killing countless people. That's what I was trying to say. And so Book tells her that the Federation now is like, occasionally someone will get up on their high horse in one of the like access points or crossover places or whatever, space stations, and they'll be wearing the badge and they'll be going on and on about honor and vision and the whatever. They're true believers. They're considered sort of like Yahoo, knights out of their time, anachronistic throwbacks who can't get over the fact that the Federation is gone. So that's the situation with the Federation as far as we know. And so Book tells her, hey, so just take out that badge before we get to Requiem. And then we get a beautiful shot of Requiem, which is like this crazy city. And then floating above it is a ship or sideways mall.
I thought that was the thing. And then you're walking into it and it was this.
Yeah, that's the mercantile.
Yeah.
And then I think the city is beneath it, right?
Yeah.
There's like a whole city beneath the mercantile. Anyway, I thought it was cool. And there's like a long bridge you have to walk to get to the mercantile. So they get there and it's basically like a flea market kind of vibe, except 1,000 years from now. What do you think?
The closest thing I've seen to it on screen was Galaxy Quest. No, not Galaxy Quest, sorry. Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay. Yes, totally. Okay.
When, there's all these antiques and things and different kinds of aliens and
the collector's collection. Yeah. This had that vibe. We do get our first view of Andorians and Orions, and the Andorians have a little bit extra facial geometry happening in Discovery here. They don't just have blue powder over their faces. The Andorians figured especially prominent in the later seasons of Enterprise, and you could always see like the pink around their eyelids and stuff. Anyway, I always thought that was funny. It's like, that's clearly just a man, not even in blue man group makeup, just like blue makeup. Anyway, these Andorians are a little bit tougher and weirder looking, but they're still clearly Andorians. And Book has to like kind of help talk Michael into the city because they're not into her because she's not a courier. So I guess she's not technically allowed to be, if she's not a courier or a buyer, she's not technically allowed to come into what I guess is Requiem, is the Mercantile.
Right.
It's the city Requiem and the building they were in the Mercantile, or vice versa.
I'm not sure.
That's never clearly explained. And
No.
it doesn't matter because in a matter of minutes, we'll be shooting this place
Maybe
up.
it was the city of Requiem. That would make sense.
I kind of assumed the Mercantile was the thing floating above it,
Yeah.
like, you know, Wall Street of Requiem.
Sure.
Whatever. We also get a first look here at some new cool future tech, because when they see that Michael has some contraband on her, I just called them hand cannons because we haven't been given a name for them yet. Is that what you wrote?
Yeah, I wrote hand cannons. Arm cannons,
Yeah,
actually, I think was what I said.
Arm cannons, whatever. They like show up. They just kind of like, they're there all the time, I guess. Maybe
it's like Wolverine.
Yeah, they like, when you need them, they show up. It's so weird. We're going to need to dig into that. And anyway, they're able to talk Michael in. And that's when Book explains the whole way that the Mercantile works, that like people buy and sell things holographically or come here and agree with the Mercantile, and then the couriers are paid by the Mercantile to go deliver them to the buyers. And so Michael, the deal here was that Michael would give him the tricorder so he could get his dilithium, and he would show her where the subspace arrays were so she can try and contact Discovery. And then Book's like, oh yeah, here's the subspace array right through here. And Michael's like, okay, deal's a deal. Here's the tricorder. And she's like, I hope you get what you need. And he's like, thanks. And then she walks forward a step, and then she gets the carbonite treatment. Well, she gets stuck in a quote stasis beam. And Book is sort of like, hey, sorry, this is basically their jail. And I gotta go, and I'm gonna take your bag of antiquities because I need all the dilithium I can get to make my rendezvous. All right, see you later, bye-bye.
Hashtag sorry, not sorry. Because he was like, sorry, but he was not really sorry.
He wasn't really sorry. And Michael also says, when I gotta get out of here, I'm coming for you. Okay. Well, now begins a really wonderful part of the episode, because this is when Michael gets interrogated by the Andorian and the Orion, and they're doing a bit already. They're like a bickering two weird jailers. I don't really get what
they're like the odd couple, but aliens.
Yes, they're like two crime bosses or CEOs that have to share a company but kind of hate each other. Anyway, they can't get anything out of Michael, and so they drug her. They like send a drone through into her cell to spray her in the face, and she starts tripping balls. It's crazy.
It's good.
It's super great. Sonequa Martin Green was so good in this because Michael is so serious.
Yeah.
Most of the time. And this was the first time she got to cut loose and do her Tilly impression, which is great.
Yeah, when she references Tilly, and that's where we're like, remember that time when Tilly was at the sort of strip club type place?
Yes, exactly.
And got high.
Oh, yeah, in the Klingon black marketplace.
Yes, that was
where she did drugs.
Where she...
All right, so it's supposed to get Michael to talk, and from what we can see, she, at least it's implied, because we kind of go away from her and see that Book is kind of he's failing to be able to move Michael's antiquities to get anything, and then eventually gets caught up to by Cosmo. When we come back to Michael, she's basically telling the interrogators, yeah, and we gave everything away so we could save the planet. And that's what we did it. So it seems like she told them the whole story, right? That's my assumption.
Yes.
That maybe it's confusing, but she told him the whole story. She also said, quote, so basically, quote, I saved all the things, which also was super great. But she does tell them that she ran into Book. And so they go, oh, Book. So they want Book's cargo. So Book is meanwhile getting the snot kicked out of him by Cosmo. And Cosmo is not only beating the crap out of Book, he's also saying that he's going to feed grudge to people on his planet, which is the only thing Book seems to take exception with. He says, keep your name out of her mouth. And then he says, when he says she shall feed a whole planet, Book says she's a queen. Okay, so as a cat owner, I relate to Book. So
see, that's where I missed it, because I thought he was talking about the cargo.
I was wondering as I rewatched that maybe that was true.
Because it would make more sense, because the cargo itself is pretty huge. That's why I was like, oh, that'll feed the planet.
And they do want to eat it.
Right.
That's what we find out.
That's why I thought it. I could see why if he took exception if it was grudge, but that's why I thought it was the cargo.
But I think that Cosmo is saying, like, I'm gonna take grudge and I'm gonna feed her to the, because I don't think he wasn't planning on doing anything with the worm, because he was the actual slated courier for the worm. He was the official courier for the worm.
Oh, yeah, fair.
And Book steals worm. Anyway, we sort of get that.
Got it. That makes more sense.
Anyway, the interrogators show up with Michael and they stop Cosmo from beating the crap out of Book. Excuse me. But when Michael arrives and Book is like, hey, what's up? Michael immediately punches him directly in the face. And Cosmo wants to shoot Book, but he's not supposed to have weapons inside the mercantile. And then they're like, can I shoot him anyway? Because he stole from me. And they say, well, first we need to find his cargo. And then Book says, well, okay, can I at least shoot her? Pointing the gun at Michael. And at the same time, they've been surrounded by other Andorians and hench people. Yes, so they do. Michael gives him a very drunk one.
It's great.
I had to watch it a couple times, like, what was that? But yeah, she's like,
having a sort of
yeah.
Looks like she's having a giant facial tick.
Yes. And then Book is like, he's on board. And then they get to kicking butt. They like take down, do the classic Star Trek back-to-back, two people fighting a group of people. You grab their guns. Now you've got guns. She's got a hand cannon. He's got a hand cannon. They're cannoning. And then they go hide behind some cover, and Michael is still super high. So she's like, do you think I have do you think I'm over, what did she say? I'm overcompensating? And he's like, what? Did they give you that stuff? And she's like, oh yeah. And then there's two cute moments for Michael that I really loved in that fight that were just reactions that she had. One was when Book just snaps the neck of that Andorian. You remember Michael is just like, she goes like, what? Huh?
Oh yeah.
Ooh, like, ooh, I'm gonna tell. And then when he uses what I'm calling the pulse weapon.
Oh, that was so cool.
It was so cool. It's like a little blue thing, and it like opens up or something, and it just bursts, it just pushes people by like kinetic energy. And Michael basically leads out and goes, what? I just love that she was just completely, it was a super adventure for her.
Yeah. Plus being high as a kite.
High as a kite. This is what I mean. It was very hijinksy. And it wasn't, you're right, it had a very Star Warsy feel, because this was like just panic in the marketplace and, a bar fight essentially.
Yeah.
But during that fight, Michael does see some dilithium. So she like goes over through all the phaser fire and just starts putting it in her bag. And then Book tries to get it from her. And she's like, you got to help me get to the comms array. That's the only way I'm going to give you this dilithium. And then they get pulsed and pushed over tables and then trapped behind a force field. And the Book's like, hold on. And then he does the transport on them, because now in the future, there are transportable transport doors. I don't know what you would call it.
It was a bit like Harry Potter, You can just transport yourself somewhere.
But you have to let it recharge every 30 seconds. It was actually, I think Michael calls them portable transporters, but any way you describe something that's a transporter that also you carry with you is going to sound redundant. And have a transporting transporter or a transportable transporter.
It's almost like a cell phone. So I was like, maybe a cell porter. Cell port.
It's a cell porter. It's trans-cellular 5G. So anyway, he transports them to a ledge, and she's like, what? And then she punches him again. And then she's like, you need to help me get to an array, but then they're being followed by more henchmen. So then they fight the henchmen, and then they transport again, and then the henchmen follow them again, and then I think they transport one more time. Yes, and they're followed one more time, and then they're on a rooftop, a cliff top, and they're followed again. And Michael's like, we gotta go. And he's like, it's gonna take 30 seconds to recharge. So they take cover behind a rock. And Michael says, like, I punched you in the nose. I'm sorry about that. And he's like, you saying that because you think we're gonna die? And she's like, yup. And he's like, oh, okay, let me figure something out. And he opens up his green circular thing and he types something. And then Michael gets shot in the arm. An important narrative moment. And then Book turns to her and says, you're gonna be very mad. And this is so Han Solo. Star Wars the max. Yep. She's like, what? And he's like, here we go. And then he pulls, they both jump off. He like yanks her off a cliff, and they transport as they're falling off the cliff into the water, which apparently you can't follow. You can't be tracked if you transport into water or into solid material.
Why? Sure. I don't know why you would want to. Well, maybe it's in a cave, possibly.
I assume that's what it is, like a completely covered over cave. So yeah. Anyway, they get to land, and Book's like, oh, we did it. We got away. They can't track us. And he turns around and Michael punches him a third and final time.
He does have a nice shiner at the end of this episode, to be fair.
Yeah, well, she's punched him dead on. Sucker punched him 3 times. Every time he's gotten hit, he's been turning towards her like to say something. Which anyway, I just love that about Michael. So we cut to Book with his shirt off. Hey, what's up? Gotta dry off my stuff. I'm Book, super hot. Hey, how's it going? I got a British accent, but whatever, I'm for space. Yeah. Oh, and Michael's like, oh, I've been shot a long time. And he's like, oh shit, I talked to plants and stuff. Check this out. And he like gets down on his knees in front of the water, and he like does some like sort of like a chanting thing, and his forehead glows, and then a beautiful glistening plant grows out of the water, and then he squeezes some like space aloe vera from the plant into Michael's hand, and he's like, that's gonna help you not getting infected. This is how I think sexy Book talks when he gets into sexy mode.
I'm just wondering if this is how your toys used to talk to each other when you were a little boy.
Yeah, of course. I did all the voices. Yeah. These are the same voices I've been doing for 35 years. Okay, so she's able to use some of this balm in the wound, which apparently is good, will help her from not getting infected. And then she's like, I should still wrap it. And then Book literally has a handkerchief. Come on.
Yeah.
And then Brooke has a handkerchief, shirt off, talks to plants, handkerchief. All right, Cleveland. So he wraps her thing, and they talk for a bit, and he allows her to use he's got his little device. It's like a razor. And he's like, oh, this has a bunch of stuff in it. This has a subspace comms array. You can try to contact your ship this way. And even though she's able to send out the call a few times, there's no response from Discovery. So this is also when Book lets on. And he's like, I don't know if you know this, but I have a pretty good feeling you're a time traveler, because you don't know anything about anything. You don't know about the burn. You don't know about the mercantile and all this stuff. And also, this is when he says that all time travel technology was destroyed after the temporal wars. Yes. The temporal wars. Now, I have too much self-respect to admit how many times I've watched Enterprise, but most of Enterprise's first season and some of the last season is about this temporal war that goes on. But I don't think they ever go this far into the future. But I know that there was a temporal war thing and they try to destroy the. Anyway, I thought that was a weird callback to Enterprise. And all I'm saying is, I hope we don't, whatever. I have a lot of, there's a time when Captain Archer goes super, super far into the future for like an hour, and that would be super weird. That could also be the burn. That's a theory that I said I wasn't going to share with anybody, but look, here I am telling you the truth. There's a thing where the entire Starfleet gets blown up a little bit at the end of Enterprise, and he's able to change that from having happened. Do you remember that?
I'm not sure if I ever got to the end of Enterprise because it just lost me.
Well, good on you. You have true self-worth.
I tried.
Yeah.
I just couldn't do it.
He and like a crew member of his who's in Section 31 from the future have to save all humanity, but they, instead of doing it over the course of an entire season, do it in like 25 minutes with like copper. Okay, so there were temporal wars too. Hey, that's a surprise. I guess that's something we're gonna have to dig into. Anyway, after all that, Book finally puts a shirt on and they decide to go back to the ship. And once they get there, they are ambushed. They are surrounded by henchmen and the two main baddies from the Mercantile. And they're like, yeah, we got you now, and we got your ship. And they like uncloak it. And they're like, yeah, what do we need this other courier for if you can't even hold onto your stuff from this other courier? And that's when they kill Cosmo, I guess. I can't tell if these guns kill people or not because they kind of turn into like a weird dust.
I guess
but I assume they're
do.
dying.
Yeah, I thought that.
So a lot of people died in this episode.
They either die or got eaten.
Oh yeah, they did.
They did.
They did. I just looked this up and I forgot because two of the henchmen were the species that Morin is from Deep Space Nine. I need to Google it. Can I Google that?
You absolutely may.
You can Google that.
He is a Lurian. I just looked this up 2 days ago. Anyway, it's the Andorian, the Orion, Cosmo, who gets immediately destroyed, and like 3 or 4 Lurians. And those are the henches. And so they get the code from Book, and the code is sticky. And this is when he gets very, very British to me. No? They say, why is that? He said, what kind of code is that? And he says, because that's the code. He basically only left out the word mate.
Yeah. When it's your ship, you make up your own code.
Yeah. Well, they said, like, what kind of code is that? He goes, because that's the code. When it's your ship, you make up your own mate.
Code,
and I was like, because that's the code, man. It sounded very...
bit more street.
A little bit more street. Quite, yeah. I felt like I was listening to like garage music or something. Did I say it right? Okay.
I would know what garage music is.
Hey, I thought you were the expert on turn of the millennium trip hop from the UK. No UK trip hop.
No.
Neither am I. Okay, why are we talking about it? So they open up the thing, and it's some kind of worm, and they wake it up by shooting like a warning shot to see that if it's alive, and it becomes clear that this worm is some sort of delicacy that they don't want to kill or shoot because it's best eaten fresh. And then as the worm starts to stir, Book tells Michael, hey, close your eyes. And they do. And then the worm turns around and it's got super weird psychedelics, and it puts everybody in a weird trance. And then it jumps out of the cargo bay and it proceeds to eat at least 2 of the hedges.
Yeah.
And then the last 3 run because they don't want to be. They're eaten in like a bite, like literally just consumed. And then once it's done, and Michael and Book are celebrating, it comes over to Michael and swallows her as well. And then Book does his sexy thing with his glowing forehead, and he's like, "Hey, come on." Also, apparently, this trans worm's name is Molly, because when it goes for Michael, he says, "Molly, no."
Oh, I missed Molly.
Did you catch that?
No, I did not. I missed that.
He says, "Molly, no." Anyway, Book is able to get Molly to spit Michael out. And then Michael says, basically, this has been one of the strangest days of my life. So
then they get back on his ship.
They get on the ship and they're in the slipstream, I guess. Quantum slipstream.
And finally, Book says, "Oh, I think I know someone who might be able to help you."
Oh, that's later. That's once they deliver the worm on the ship.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they deliver the worm.
We find out about Book and that he comes from a family of like poachers and hunters or killers. He said killers. Something like that, killers and poachers, and that every couple generations, someone like him is born who's like a balance of some sort, and he's no longer welcome within his family. And Michael's like realizes that, or learns that Book has been saving these worms for the last few years. Like that's what he's been doing. So that's why he's a smuggler. Yeah, I'm Book. I'm a smuggler with the heart of gold. That's right. I had clothes and I take my shirt off and I save people. I talk to plants. I talk to worms and I save worms for the good of humanity. And I'm so great. Anyway, so that's Book. Everyone loves him. And then they arrive at Sanctuary, and we find out that his real name is Cleveland Booker, and they get the transworms back just in time for the breeding cycle. And it's basically a micro version of Star Trek, the motion picture, the fourth one.
Yes, was that
where they have to get the humpback whales? Yeah. The Journey Home? Is that what that one's called? Okay. So then Booker is like, "Hey, I do have someone who might be able to help you."
Yeah.
And he takes her to what used to be an old Fed relay station, but is now like a courier hangout point or something. And we are brought into the room we saw at the very top of the episode. And Michael introduces herself. And the man who was with the bird that wakes him up, who sits behind the desk waiting for a signal every day, introduces himself. His name is Aditya Sahil, and he is the Federation liaison. And Michael says, "I'm Commander Burnham. I'm here to find Disco. I need your help." He goes, "That's what I'm here for. It would be my honor to serve you, Commander." They open up the thing, they scan. There's only 2 ships that are Federation apparently within that scanning radius. You can only scan over 600 light year radius because long range sensors died a few decades ago, I guess. So anyone else who's out there is also going to be cut off longer than long range sensors can scan. So Discovery could be there, but outside of sensor range, or because it was behind her in the time wormhole, it may not have arrived yet, and therefore it could be there within seconds, the next day, or in 1,000 years. So as Michael is mourning the fact that she may never see any of her friends again, Sahil says, "Listen, I have a secret for you. I was never sworn in. My father was an actual commissioned officer, and his father was a commissioned officer, but I never was sworn in by anybody because there was no one around to swear me in. And so I just took up the job. I've been doing this for 40 years, waiting for someone to walk through that door from Starfleet who needed my help, who needed me to be the liaison. And today is that day. And you are that person. And I want to thank you for that. And also, here in this box is a flag of the United Federation of Planets, and only a commissioned officer can hang it up. And so would you do me the honor of doing that?" And Michael says, "You show more duty than any other commissioned officer I've ever seen. Would you do me the honor of becoming our acting communications chief and helping me hang this flag?" And then they hang the beautiful flag, and it's got the little laurels and the planets. And Sahil says, "Hope is a powerful thing." And Michael says, "Sometimes it's the only thing." And then Sahil says, "Our numbers are few, but our spirit is undiminished." And Michael vows, "She will find others if they are out there." And that is the end of season 3, episode 1. I got so nerdy that my nose is clogged up now.
I know. I was thinking of you suddenly got a cold.
No,
Oh,
my this is just how my sinuses react to hyper nerd excitement.
Oh, I see.
This is how I sounded all through high school.
Oh, you poor nerd.
Yeah.
One thing I thought was quite cool that we hadn't quite touched on because we didn't get there, but
Yes, please.
Was where it was filmed. I actually guessed correctly. Did you guess where it's
Where
filmed?
was it from? No, I had no idea. Where?
Iceland. Which makes sense.
All those beautiful vistas.
Yeah, with the the volcanic vistas. Because
Yes.
it's essentially a giant volcano of an island with the warm hot springs as well.
Right.
And then so half of it, I think a lot of it was filmed in Iceland and a lot of it was filmed in Canada. So I think the big bit with the lake and where the ship was, I think was Canada. And then where the volcano bit was and more of the kind of rocky terrain was
where they're running and fighting and all this stuff. That probably was all Iceland.
Yeah.
Well, that's brilliant. Also announced today that season 4 has been publicly confirmed and begins shooting at the end of November. We don't have a section for this, but I feel like we should probably have a section of the podcast that is just like, what do you think?
Trek news. Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, yeah, Trek news. Trek news is a good one because we've often been blindsided by it. But also, I have some weird theories from just watching this episode. I don't know if you have any strange theories about how this season may go.
You know, I got so wrapped up in all of the new things that I saw things, but I wasn't able to focus on them because of all of the new information and new things that were coming at me.
Yeah. I agree. It was only in the second watching that I started to be like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's interesting.
The second watching was when I noticed that when she flew through like what looked like a broken ship.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, I wonder what that was.
Well, you had the wherewithal to check and see if you could see the registry. I didn't even think to do that.
One thing I did notice was, I think in one of the early scenes where Michael and Book were having a fight, he said something about the Gorn.
Yes. He said that the Gorn destroyed 2 light years worth of subspace.
Yeah. So I thought it was curious.
I don't remember anything even referential to that in past tracks, but I'd have to think. To the Gorn destroying 2 years worth. It would have to have been after the furthest into the future Star Trek goes is Voyager, or maybe Picard
now.
Yeah, Picard is the furthest into the future. Heretofore, yeah. And I don't think anyone's mentioned anything about Gorn, so I don't know when that would have happened. And I mean, the Gorn we know, but in terms of them like destroying subspace, that was a weird thing. Yeah, there's so much being dropped about what's happened in the 930 years since she's been gone. And none of it's something we're familiar with. No one's like, oh yeah, and then Picard did this. You know, no one's like, Janeway killed all the Borg.
It's all literally ancient history.
Yeah, because that was literally 890 years ago, you know? Yeah, that was interesting. I have a very bizarre theory. I'm almost ashamed to share it.
Please do.
Great.
And then we can look back in a few episodes.
Yeah, I'll be very embarrassed.
And mock you.
But I have a strong suspicion, apart from the fact that I think that Book is not merely human.
No.
But I think, and this is crazy, and I go back and forth about it, I think he's like Klingon.
Oh, like an evolved Klingon.
Yeah, he has forehead ridges, except they light up. They're not like pronounced bone protrusions, because maybe he is, and he describes his people as killers / poachers, and that he's like a genetic difference, and that, you know, he's connected to all life. He doesn't kill or whatever. It just seems, oh, well, he did kill that guy then he does kill pretty badassedly. Also, the language that he's speaking sounds a bit, it could be anything, but it does have a bit of like it's like Klingon met like Esperanto. It's got there's some Klingonness to it. I mean, there's only so many sounds a human mouth can make. Yeah. This is what I've been thinking for the last 24 hours. He may not be a Klingon at all, but it would be cool if he was a Klingon and they tried to hide the fact he doesn't have brown ridges because that's how he's developed. Also because he's like an aberration, Anyway.
Interesting theory.
But with a name like Cleveland Booker,
it doesn't really sound too
it doesn't
Klingon.
seem like he could be a Klingon at all. Doesn't have to be a real name though.
True, does not have to be.
And he calls his cat Grudge. I don't know. There's more to Cleveland Booker than meets the eye.
It's curious though that we saw, so like in the Mercantile, we saw the Andorians, and what was the other race that we're familiar with?
The Orions.
The Orions. We didn't see Romulans. We didn't see Vulcans.
Yeah, Romulans, Vulcans,
humans, Bajorans. Yep.
We barely saw any humans. I don't think we saw any humans.
No.
We saw the group that were very human looking in Sanctuary at the end. Mm-hmm. But those might have been books.
But they weren't surprised to see Michael. Do you know what I mean?
True. No one was freaked out to see Michael.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see if there were any humans in the Mercantile. I would have to look at the background characters to see if there were any other humans walking about.
None stood out.
Definitely none had any prominent roles. But we also don't know where she is in the sector. We're still kind of confused.
She thinks she's at Terra Elysium. That was where she thought she was meant to pop out.
That's where she was. Those were the coordinates she was looking for, or she had planned. But the planet is called Hema, and I had closed captioning on, so it's apparently spelled Hema. But I think that's just so that you really hit the M. Hema. And if it's Terra Elysium, then they have abandoned all the no technology stuff and have decided to open up the Mercantile. I don't know. It's confusing. It's very confusing. And it's great. I'm so glad. Quotable moments.
Quotable moments. We could rebrand and you could do that one. That would sound cooler.
Quotable moments. We could do that. Like an early 90s holiday coffee jingle.
Yeah. Why? That's the theme of our show.
That is basically it's a nostalgia for the 90s.
It sounds like something off Charles in Charge.
It does. Do. That actually would be like a perfect little, and then in charge
of our days and our lives.
Do.
Anyway, quotable moments.
Quotable moment.
Mine was, whilst you find your notes, mine was, you have a very large cat.
Beautiful.
I mean, I don't know. I loved it. Thought it was a good line.
It was a great line.
And it was levity. It was the first, probably the first time we'd seen that sort of introduction of levity from Michael.
Certainly for a while, her last few days have been just gut wrenching everywhere. It hasn't been a lot of laughs, and now she hasn't found her friends. Anyway, I loved that moment, and I love Grudge the cat, and I'll come out. I don't care who knows it. Well, obviously, Aditya's speech at the end is profound. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. But I will honorable mention to Michael when she is high and she's still being interrogated and she's kind of spinning out. And then she's like, well, what's the deal with me? Why am I overcompensating? She says, I need to talk to somebody about this. Can you sit? It's a super cool story. It's just in a completely devastating way. That was a really good way to sum up the last two seasons. And then for our big Star Trek, end of the episode speech, you got Sahil. I'm not a commissioned officer. You see, my father was. His father before him. But unlike them, I was never officially sworn in. There has been no one here to do it. Yet, I watch this office every day, as I have for 40 years, believing one day others like me would walk through that door, that my hope was not in vain. Well, today is that day, and that hope is you, Commander Burnham. I mean, and that's what gives us the title, the episode.
That is the quote. That is the best one.
That is the quote.
And that is the episode.
And that is the episode. And that is our episode, ladies and gentlemen.
Next time on Set
Do we know?
We don't know, but listen, it's a pretty good guess because this one is called That Hope Is You Part 1. That this next episode will be called That Hope Is You Part 2.
Indeed.
But who knows?
Who knows? I think I looked it up and it wasn't, and I thought that's odd.
Oh, that seems strange. Well, they could be throwing us for a loop. I also forgot to mention that there's been 2 Beatles quotes in the episode so far, and I wondered if there were more that I didn't see. But I thought She's Heavy is an interesting one. And also when Michael asked Book to help her, she says, please help me. Okay, so
it is in fact called Far From Home. I don't know where the part 2 is.
What?
Yeah, odd. I did look that up earlier and I thought that's weird.
Well,
maybe
we'll let you know next week on Set Phasers what happens with the names of these episodes, because they definitely are dropping the line with this part 1 business. But in any case, all of those you watching and all of these you listening, thank you so much for joining Steph and I. If you enjoy this program, you can catch us every Friday live on Facebook at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or as a podcast dropping every Monday wherever podcasts come from. And if you like it, please rate and subscribe it.
Indeed, please do that. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Set Phasers Podcast, so feel free to follow us and join in a conversation of all things Trek. We would love it. We love to hear from you.
Yes. And if you want to support us on our continuing mission to discover what Discovery has in store for us, we'd only be delighted. You can patronize us. We can take it by going to patreon.com/setphasers.
And our next watch party, our next Netflix watch party is November the 1st, I believe.
That sounds right.
Yeah, so it's a Sunday at 4 p.m. And to join, you must be a Set Phasers patron. And you can join for as little as, is it $5, $2 or $5? I forget.
I believe it's $5. I think so. It might be $2. I don't know. We had a long discussion about this months ago.
We did. If you want to be an ensign in our Patreon, please join us there. Anyway, until next time, I am Steph Mans.
And I am Akie Burmese, and this has been Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast.
Computer. End program.